Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is one that proves sometimes the strongest hearts are hidden behind the simplest. Uniforms. No one at Westbridge Academy could handle the billionaire's daughter. Not the teachers, not the principal, not even the security staff. Her name was Victoria Langston, the only daughter of tech billionaire Richard Langston, a man whose name was on skyscrapers, hospital wings, and half the city's skyline. Victoria had everything money could buy: designer clothes, a private driver, the newest phone before it even hit the market. But what she didn't have was peace. She walked through the halls like a storm. Cloud-sharp words, cold stares, sudden outbursts. 3 teachers had already requested transfers. 1 quit mid-semester. Whispers followed her everywhere. Don't look at her wrong. Don't disagree with her. Her father owns this place. But here's what no one knew. Victoria wasn't cruel because she was spoiled. She was hurting. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier. Since then, her father had buried himself in boardrooms and billion-dollar deals. He loved his daughter, but love from a distance feels like silence, and silence can turn into anger. One rainy Monday morning, Victoria arrived at school in a black luxury car. She stepped out, headphones on. AI's distant inside the building. She accidentally knocked over a freshman's books when the girl tried to speak. Victoria snapped, "Watch where you're going." The hallway froze. Teachers pretended not to see, but someone did. At the end of the corridor stood Daniel Rivera, the school janitor, a single dad in his late 30s. Quiet, steady, always with a gentle nod and a calm smile. He'd been working there for 3 years. Most people barely noticed him except the kids who had dropped lunches or broken lockers. Daniel always noticed. He walked over, knelt down, and helped the freshman gather her books. He didn't look at Victoria with fear. He didn't look at her with anger either. He just said calmly, "Rainy days make the floors slippery. We all have to be careful." It wasn't an accusation. It wasn't sarcasm. It was simple, neutral, human. Victoria paused for a split second. Her tough expression cracked, then she scoffed and walked away. Daniel didn't chase her. He didn't complain. He just went back to mopping that afternoon. Victoria got into another argument, this time with her math teacher. She tore her worksheet in half and stormed out of class. The principal called her father again. Richard Langston answered from a conference room in Singapore. "I'll handle it," he said coldly, but he didn't. Not really. He sent flowers, he sent gifts, he sent apologies, but he didn't send himself. Meanwhile, Daniel finished his shift and picked up his 7-year-old son Mateo from daycare. Mateo was small for his age, bright eyes, curious. Daniel packed his son's lunch every morning before sunrise, worked 2 jobs to keep their small apartment, and still managed to show up at every parent-teacher meeting. To him, fatherhood wasn't an obligation, it was a privilege. The next day, something unexpected happened. Victoria skipped class and wandered into the gym. She sat on the bleachers, staring at her phone. Daniel was there, fixing a loose railing. He noticed her, but again, he didn't lecture, he didn't call the office, he just kept working. After a few minutes, he spoke without looking at her. "Gym gets quiet around this time. Good place to think." She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. He continued, "My son likes quiet places too. Says loud rooms make his head feel crowded." That caught her attention. She glanced at him. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked sharply. Daniel shrugged, "Just talking." Silence hung between them. Then she muttered, almost to herself, "People only talk when they want something." Daniel stopped tightening the bolt and looked at her directly for the first time. "I don't want anything from you." Those words hit differently because they were true. Over the next week, Victoria started showing up in random places where Daniel happened to be working: the library, the courtyard, the gym. Sometimes she spoke, sometimes she just sat there. One afternoon, she asked, "Does your son ever get angry?" Daniel wiped his hands on a cloth. "Yet, when he misses his mom." Victoria's eyes flickered. "Is she?" "She passed away," he said gently, 3 years ago." The air shifted for the first time. Victoria didn't look guarded. She looked small. "My mom too," she whispered. Daniel nodded, and in that nod was understanding, not pity, not judgment, just shared pain. From that day on, something changed. Victoria still had her sharp edges, but they softened around him when she lashed out in class. Daniel would later find her sitting alone. He never scolded. Instead, he'd say things like, "Anger's heavy. Must be exhausting carrying it all day." And she'd roll her eyes, but she'd listen. One evening, things reached a breaking point. Victoria got into a fight with another student. This time it turned physical. The school threatened suspension. Richard Langston flew back immediately. He arrived at the school in a tailored suit, anger radiating off him. "Where is she?" he demanded. The principal hesitated. "She's in the gym." When Richard entered, he found Victoria sitting on the floor, back against the wall. Daniel was nearby, not speaking, just present. Richard's voice thundered, "What is wrong with you? Do you know how this looks?" Victoria flinched, not at the volume, but at the words. Daniel stepped forward. "Carefully, sir," he said respectfully. "With all due respect, I don't think she's worried about how it looks." The room went silent. Security shifted nervously. No one spoke to Richard Langston that way, but Daniel wasn't challenging him. He was protecting her. Richard narrowed his eyes. "And who are you?" "Daniel Rivera. I take care of maintenance." Richard scoffed slightly. "This is a family matter." Daniel nodded. "I understand." But sometimes family matters need listening more than fixing. Victoria stared at the floor, her hands trembling, and for the first time, Richard noticed. Not the headlines, not the embarrassment, but his daughter's shaking hands. Daniel continued softly. She's not acting out because she doesn't care. She's acting out because she does. Richard looked at him. Confused, Daniel glanced at Victoria. She misses her mom. And she misses you. The words hit like a hammer. Victoria's breath caught stop. She whispered, but tears were already forming. Richard's face changed. The anger, drained, replaced by something raw. He knelt in front of his daughter, Victoria. She finally looked up. Why are you never there? She choked. The billionaire who commanded boardrooms and billion-dollar negotiations had no prepared speech for this. I thought I was doing this for you. He admitted. I don't need more stuff. She cried. I need you. Silence filled the gym. Heavy. Real. Daniel stepped back quietly. This wasn't his moment anymore. It was theirs. Father and daughter sat on that gym floor for nearly an hour, talking, really talking. When they finally stood, Richard approached Daniel. I owe you an apology, he said sincerely. Daniel shook his head. No apology needed. Richard studied him. How did you do it? Every specialist, every counselor, every teacher failed. Daniel smiled faintly. I didn't try to control her. I just showed up. Those 3 words changed everything. I just showed up. The next week, something extraordinary happened. Richard Langston cleared his schedule. He attended school events. He ate dinner at home. He even showed up at Victoria's art showcase, and when she nervously presented her painting, a storm clearing into sunlight, he was in the front row clapping, not as a billionaire, but as a dad. Victoria's behavior transformed gradually, not overnight, but steadily. She apologized to the freshmen. She started participating in class. She even volunteered to help organize a school fundraiser. People whispered again, but this time, it wasn't fear, it was awe. One afternoon, Richard requested a meeting with Daniel in his office. Daniel felt out of place among glass walls and city views. Richard spoke plainly. I want to offer you a position in my foundation. Community Outreach Director. Triple your salary. Daniel blinked. It was life-changing money, a better apartment, better schools for Mateo's security. But he thought of the hallways, the kids, the quiet conversations. Thank you, he said carefully, but I'm needed here. Richard stared at him. You're turning down a fortune. Daniel smiled. I already have one. He meant his son, his purpose, the simple power of showing up. Richard respected that. Instead of pushing, he made a different decision. He funded a new mentorship program at the school and put Daniel in charge of it, a program for students struggling with grief, anger, and loneliness. Victoria volunteered as the first student ambassador. Together, they created safe spaces, listening circles, quiet rooms, places where no one had to pretend. Months later, at the annual school assembly, the principal stepped onto the stage. Tonight, she announced, we recognize someone who reminded us what leadership truly looks like. She called Daniel's name. The auditorium erupted in applause. Victoria stood first, clapping the loudest. Richard followed, eyes shining. Daniel walked onto that stage, in his janitor uniform, not ashamed, not small, but proud, because sometimes doing the impossible doesn't mean grand gestures. It means sitting on a gym floor listening. Showing up, loving without conditions. No one could handle the billionaire's daughter. Until a single dad janitor did the impossible, and the impossible turned out to be something money could never buy: presence, understanding, and a father willing to learn how to be one again. If this story touched your heart, make sure you like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear that sometimes the quietest people make the loudest difference. And remember, you don't have to be powerful to change a life, you just have to show up.